Welcome back to Notre Dame Day. My name is Jack Nolan. If you follow Fighting Irish sports, you will know me as the longtime radio voice of Notre Dame men's basketball and a member of the Fighting Irish digital media team. If you are joining us for the first time this hour, welcome. Notre Dame Day is a global celebration of all things Notre Dame. We have been broadcasting since 6:42 p.m. yesterday. Folks, I am not making this up. By the way, in military time, that's 1842, the year the university was founded. We have been sharing incredible stories from all over the world these past 23 hours, and we still have 6 more hours of great stories to tell. I am joined this hour, as I have been for the past 2 hours, by ABC 57's Emily Evans. Are you enjoying your first stint here at Notre Dame Day?
I really am, Jack. I'm absolutely enjoying it. It's been exciting, and I've been in the broadcasting business for a few years now, and I can honestly say I've never heard or seen anything like this, a 29-hour broadcast.
Now, you grew up in Ohio. Were you a Notre Dame fan growing up in Ohio?
You know, I wasn't, but I have to admit, moving here a couple years ago, once you soak up the atmosphere, you can't help but love the Fighting Irish. So I've been converted.
Absolutely.
And what else would you expect from a university like Notre Dame? No other school in the world has ever attempted a 2-hour live broadcast, let alone 29 straight hours, and this is Notre Dame's second time at it.
And like most things, keep getting better and better. Now, if you've been a regular viewer of our Notre Dame Day broadcast, you would have noticed a variety of stories being told each hour, from the academy to student life to athletics to alumni telling their stories all over the world. This hour will be different.
And this hour will be different, and appropriately so. Over the next 50-odd minutes, we're going to turn our attention to the legacy of the one and only Father Ted Hesburgh, the Holy Cross priest who served as Notre Dame's president for 35 years.
Father Ted's presidency is the longest in Notre Dame's history. He led dramatic growth as well as a transition to coeducation. The university's enrollment grew from just under 5,000 students when he took office to nearly 10,000 when he turned things over to Father Malloy. He served as a proud member of the United States Civil Rights Commission for 15 years, serving as its chairman the final 4. 11 United States presidents sought advice and counsel from Father Ted. He received more than 150 honorary degrees, the most honorary degrees ever conferred on one person. He also received the Congressional Medal of Honor. He was even named an honorary Navy chaplain. Yet the title that Father Ted loved most and was most proud of, a simple one: priest. We have an incredible hour ahead for you, so don't go away.
We all have the power to transform someone else's life, and every day, some people do.
13-year-old Katie grows thousands of pounds of food a year in her garden to feed needy families like mine.
When the housing market crashed, my coworkers agreed to cut their salaries. Layoffs were avoided, and I was able to keep my job.
30 years after graduation, Chris, my college roommate, gave me his kidney. He saved my life.
So why do some of us give so much and others so little? And how can we help other people become more generous?
At the University of Notre Dame, sociologist Christian Smith is leading an international research effort to study the causes, manifestations, and consequences of generosity.
It's a premise of our project that a more generous world is a better world. We are doing something truly unique here in studying generosity scientifically instead of philosophically.
Notre Dame is awarding grants in fields of research from psychology to genetics, with funding from the John Templeton Foundation.
Notre Dame has taken a leadership role in putting a bright light on the topic of generosity. With these grants, we've done everything from map social networks in Africa to recruit subjects from around the world to participate in experiments, all directed at understanding why are we generous to each other.
The goal of our research is to provide the tools and the insights to people and organizations to help make the world a more generous place.
The University of Notre Dame asks, what would you fight for?
Fighting to feed the hungry.
Fighting for our co-workers.
Fighting to save a friend.
We are the Fighting Irish.
Welcome back to this very special hour of Notre Dame Day. I'm Jack Nolan, and I cannot think of a better place to start off this hour's tribute to the legacy of Father Ted Hesburgh than atop the 13th floor of the iconic building that carries his name, the Hesburgh Library. Our own Digger Phelps is standing by with a very special guest. Digger?
Well, there's many great people at this university who behind the scenes have been an impact without people really knowing. And with me is Melanie Chapeau, who for 27 years was the person behind the scenes with Father Ted Hesburgh and running his life for 27 years, in-house and obviously outside on the road. But as you look at the 27 years of what he accomplished, what would you say would be the one thing that impressed him the most, was something he wanted to change at Notre Dame when he first took over, and it's today happening?
It would be the women, admitting women.
And now, because there's 1,000 women and 1,000 men, right, it's 50%, and now his dream is a reality.
And he did see that.
And he also saw, as you well know, he's the godfather of the Civil Rights Act. And so in 2014, when that became the 50th anniversary, he lived to see that. And did he ever talk much about that to you?
No, he all the time he was just so proud of it and the way things were going most of the time.
And he had that great relationship with President Eisenhower, who asked him to lead the charge to get it done.
Right, that's correct. That's right. That's right.
When you look at things that have happened here at Notre Dame, and obviously when you came in and took over, we see what he and Father Joyce did behind the scenes. And that went on for some 35 years, because what they did from 52 to 87 is what we see today.
That's right. That's right.
And when you look at how they got that accomplished, what was that relationship when you saw them together?
Well, they got along very, very well, and I don't know. Well,
What impressed me the most was that Father Hesburgh at one point, after 20 years, said to Father Joyce, "Why don't you become president? I'll take your job." and Father Joyce said no, he didn't want
not
to
at
do
all. No, he was not interested. He was happy what he did with athletics and the finances.
And
because Father was traveling a lot.
And he always trusted Father Joyce to run the place while he was away.
Very much so.
When you look at some of the great moments in his life, and I know he was close to George Steinbrenner, and Steinbrenner loved the Yankees. And I think it was Game 6 in the World Series back when. He flew them both in to say the team mass, right?
Right.
And
well,
they won the World Series. And threw out the ball
Well,
and won the World Series. And that game, based on throwing the ball, with also saying a mass in the dugout, in the locker room, actually, for the Yankees.
Right.
All right, let's get back to his relationship with some guy named Pope Paul VI. And that started when Pope Paul VI was the Monsignor in Milano, and then became Cardinal Milano. And they used to hang out in this restaurant called Alfredo's. What was that all about, the Alfredo sauce?
Well, that was really, now, Digger, that was before my time.
Yeah, but you know when we go to Parisi's, what do we have to have?
Fettuccine Alfredo.
That was it. All right, so now all of a sudden, Pope Paul VI says, "I want to make you a cardinal." Mm-hmm. And Father Ted goes over. You know the story. Tell what happened.
Well, right there. And they were talking about it, and he reached in, pulled it off his hand and gave him, show him that.
This is the ring right here.
This is the ring right here that he gave Father. And Father consequently just put it right in his pocket.
And said, "No, because I'm a priest?"
Right. Well, and said, can you, I said to him later, I did ask, I said, you did that? And he said, well, yes. He said, can you see me wearing that ring? No.
And he always said to me, "I was born to be a priest, and I'll die as a priest." So he didn't want to take the opportunity to become a cardinal?
No, he did not. He had other offers too, different things for different positions in the church, and he was not interested.
I think when you look at his whole life and what he did and how he did it and the things he accomplished, obviously the cigar in his ashtray, as you know and I know, this was his chair, and we would sit over here, and then he would just listen, smoke the cigar. And why then all of a sudden he had trouble seeing, you made the decision to bring students in to read to him?
Well, why did we bring him in, you say?
I mean, the students volunteered to read to him.
Right. Well, it was the Peace Study students that came in the class. That was their work-study job. And it worked out very, very well. We usually had five different students 5 days a week for the semester. They would each day they did it, and it worked out so very well. And it was nice because Father, the kids always had questions and different things, and he loved that because that kept him in touch with his students.
And the other thing he loved to do was to look out this window to see the Blessed Mother over on the Golden Dome. Let's get up and walk over, because this window wasn't here when he came in. They had to put it in. So let's talk about the window, Melanie.
Okay.
What do you recall about the window?
Well, he always used to say when there were problems, he said, you know what, I just always would look out and say, to the lady on the dome, it's your problem, you have to help.
And then he would look and say some prayers and talk to the Blessed Mother and get it done?
Right, exactly. So that's, the way it was.
When you look at everything that's been around here and the people he has seen and touched and talked to and blessed, why was his impact so important to people?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, just a magnet to it. And when you think about it, even at his funeral, with all those children, the students, I say children, but they're kids, lined up on the way to the cemetery, but they weren't even born when he retired.
When I look at his impact, and we see what Mother Teresa, as a nun, has been nominated to become a saint, do you feel that Father Hesburgh, as a priest, should get in line and become a saint?
I do.
Why?
Well, just the way he always has been. I mean, the patience, the kindness, the goodness. I mean, for 27 years, I mean, it was wonderful. I mean, I had firsthand experience.
Well, let me just say this. What you did for him in those 27 years, all of us on the outside, knowing what you did on the inside, we will never forget that. And knowing that he has passed, you're part of his life and a big influence on why he was able to continue in his last moments to live and believe in a lady on the Golden Dome. So thank you, Melanie.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, believe me, those 27 years. Thank you.
You got it, Melanie. Thanks, and let's get back. Any update on the scores? Thank you.
Thank you, Digger, and we have some more important things than scores right now, but what a great lady, and what a great way to kick off this hour's tribute to Father Hesburgh. Joining us now is Father David Tyson, the recently announced Luke McGinnis Director of Nonprofit Professional Development in the Mendoza College of Business. Now, he has quite the resume. Father Tyson is the former provincial of the USA Province of Priests and Brothers of the Congregation of Holy Cross. He's a former president of the University of Portland and the former executive assistant to Father Ted Hesburgh. So welcome very
Thanks, Jack.
kindly and very nice, fully welcoming you to Notre Dame Day. First of all, welcome back to campus.
Yes, it's nice to be back, and thanks for having me, that's for sure.
Executive assistant to Father Ted Hesburgh. You were just 33 years old.
I was.
What was that like?
It was an amazing experience. All of my thoughts and feelings about Ted since his death have been gratitude and joy, and really stemming from that experience. I didn't know what it was, and I wasn't so sure he did at the time. There hadn't been one, to my knowledge, and I don't know the backstory, but I was sitting in my room in Dillon Hall, a fairly new assistant professor of management, and it was after a late night mass, and I had on a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and my phone rang. It was probably 11:30, and the voice on the other end said, "Hi, Dave, this is Father Ted Hesburgh." And I paused waiting for the prank line, and nothing happened, and I said, "Who?" And he said, "Father Ted Hesburgh." He said, "I thought you might be interested in coming up to my office for a chat." So I really froze, and that conversation led to my very quickly getting dressed between terror and unbelief, going over to the main building, and he met me at the front door. Everything was locked up, and he met me there, and we went upstairs, and we chatted, and it was the sort of thing that I was a young Holy Cross priest, and we ate dinner together at Corby and prayed together, etc., but we didn't exactly hang out together. So I felt very much in the presence of an auspicious occasion and with him in my life. And it was a wonderful, I would say, 2-hour conversation, and it was during that he asked me if I would be interested in working with him as an executive assistant, and I asked him what that meant, and his pause was long, and he said, well, it would evolve as we were together. So I spent 2.5 years with him in that job, and then became vice president for student affairs. But at that time, and I'm very conscious of it now, since his death, is everything that everyone said in testimony about him at his wake and funeral is certainly true, but it was a privilege for me to be able to live up close and personal to that for those 2.5 years. And I believe, who he really was, and I probably saw him at least once every day when he was in town. My job was you name it, and I did it. From everything from correspondence to representing him to going with him places. So it was a real education. I call it Administration 101, but not in a classroom.
Truly an enormous figure in the 20th century
Absolutely.
with the way he influenced the entire world. And yet anybody who's worked on this campus for any length of time seems to have a Father Hesburgh story. My quick one was I had introduced him and said hello and talked with him briefly, but when Pope John Paul II died, they sent me on over. I did a lot of news to interview him about that. And as I left, he goes, "Jack, you've never been here, have you?" in his office. And he gives me a tour, and I'm thinking, I'm not worthy of this.
Yes.
But it really seems that he was a people person. Was he a people person?
Absolutely. And what is remarkable about him is what you saw was what you got. He didn't have a game face. He was who he was. He was even-tempered for the most part. I thought quite humorous. I'm smiling because I teased him a lot, and his way to deal with that was to ignore me when I did it. But yes, he was very human, and whether he was with the Pope or whether he was with a freshman, he was Ted.
Is there anything that you can tell us about Father Ted that might surprise people? Anything you think people should know about him that they may not expect? And it's a difficult question.
Yeah, that they would not expect. I suspect something that people didn't see ever, because he rarely showed it, was temper. And but a couple times I saw him get angry, and one time, and the person wasn't there. But it wasn't kill the messenger.
Mm-hmm.
But one time it had to do with the awarding of a degree to a young woman student who was dying. And before we could do that, the woman died. And he asked me, so I went to see him, and I said, "When do you want to confer the degree?" And he said, "Well, we could confer it just today." So I said, "Okay," and I went to the registrar, and a long story short, the registrar was reticent to do this because of university policy. So I just went up and told him, I said, "I don't know what to tell you, Ted, but I said, the registrar is telling me that we only confer degrees in August and in January." Well, let me tell you, he went just like this. He said, "The last time I heard, I was still president. I just conferred that degree." And I said, "I'll take care of it." He normally, that was a side of him that I had never seen. But again, there was no game face. He adjusted to the environment and the people he was with, and also just a charitable person in his conversation with people, even if he disagreed with you.
And the Catholic religion has a lot of rules, but I always thought that what made Father Hesburgh great was he was very pragmatic and practical with a great sense of what's right, regardless if it falls under the rules.
Yep. I would say he had a will of steel when it came to his convictions. And also, he was a hard-nosed pragmatist. There was simply no doubt about it. But pleasant to be with. I never went to work ever with him, even when there was bad stuff that was going to happen that day, that I didn't enjoy going with him.
I've always enjoyed talking with you.
Great.
Welcome back to campus.
Yes,
Great to
thanks so
have you
much.
back.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with more of Notre Dame Day right after this short timeout.
On August 6, 1995, Paraguayan soldiers showed up at the home of the Maciel family and took away their 15-year-old son, Victor Hugo. 2 months later, military officials brought his dead body back home.
Tu sama na member reho to para mesari. La ensayo ra umbe ubahundi.
In his tenure as chairman of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, Notre Dame law professor Paolo Carrazza was instrumental in improving the protection of the rights of children in Paraguay and throughout the Americas.
The forced recruitment of child soldiers into the Paraguayan military had been a common practice for decades. Achieving change required understanding the obstacles that the government faced, and then working with those government officials who were willing to change.
In 2006, through Professor Carranza's diplomatic efforts, the Paraguayan government publicly acknowledged human rights violations and enacted legal reforms to outlaw the enlistment of child soldiers.
Como representante del gobierno, se aguilie a Yerurende perdoña Francisca.
A pensaba que rogado y supela o hija botella. Y milagro bigua.
At Notre Dame, we're trying to teach our students that law isn't merely an exercise of power. It has a larger purpose. That purpose is to serve the good and dignity of human persons.
The University of Notre Dame asks, what would you fight for?
Fighting for human rights. We are the Fighting Irish.
Welcome back to Notre Dame Day. Our next guest is a 1949 graduate of the University of Notre Dame. He served Notre Dame for 44 years. That's right, 44 years as the university photographer. He had a front row seat to all 35 years of Father Ted's presidency. Joining us now is Bruce Harlan. Bruce, welcome to Notre Dame Day.
Thank you, Emily.
We love to have you here. Thanks for being with us. And we want to start with a story, one I'm not sure that many were aware of, and this story is about Father Ted and his Nixon coffee cup. What can you tell us about that?
Well, let me tell you a little backstory first. Father was appointed to the Civil Rights Commission by Dwight Eisenhower and moved up the ranks until he was with Nixon. And they kind of knocked heads together and didn't get along at all, and Nixon fired him. And Father Ted's quote was, "They fired me with enthusiasm." So with that, about a month later, I was in his office, and he was drinking coffee out of his cup. And I looked at the cup, and it was painted on the side a $3 bill with Nixon's picture in the center. And I kind of chuckled, and I said, "Where did you get that?" And he said, "Oh, one of the trustees sent it to me." I said, "You know that's got to go for the pictures." He just smiled, and when he was through, I took the cup, put it on a shelf. And every time I went in there afterward, that's the first thing I looked for.
Is the coffee cup.
The coffee cup. That was not a good thing.
Well, the University Archives has been kind enough to provide us with a number of photos of Father Ted, and I believe you took all but one of them.
All but one.
Wow. Well, why don't we go through them, and maybe you can give us some context to each of those. All right, our first one, that's a beautiful photo there.
Thank you. That was requested by one of our trustees, actually two, Fritz and Millie Kaiser out of Tucson, Arizona. He was a professional photographer. She was an artist. He called me one day and he said, "I would like a picture, 3/4 view of Father Ted for Millie to do a bas relief." And he said, "Can you do it without him knowing why?" And I said, "Sure." So probably the next week I was over there, and I thought I ought to do this right now. So I was looking at a book and mentioned it. He came over, and I just got him in the right spot. And I said, "Hey, I like that. Hang on." And that was the picture that I took, and he used it for his official picture for about 10 years.
Wow. And now this next one we're going to see, it has a striking resemblance to the world's most interesting man, which many would say was.
This was a surprise to me. I was waiting for an assignment over there, and he just walked in. He looked at me and he said, "What do you think?" I said, "You look tremendous." He had a very handsome mind, and just a super guy, really.
And let's see, this next one is a Father Ted signing a beam there.
That is the topping out ceremony for his library. The last beam that is put in any building is usually signed by the president or the CEO. And he signed it and put a little Latin inscription along the beam too. So that was about 1960, I believe.
Wow, okay. And let's see, this next one is pretty unique there.
In the middle is Pat O'Brien and our illustrious President Reagan, who Pat O'Brien was Rockney, and Reagan was the Gipper in the 1941 film Newt Rockney All-American. Hesburgh is on the left, and on the right is Ed Steffen, who was then chairman of the Board of Trustees.
Wow. All right, and this next one.
Okay, this is the one I did not take. Father was on his way to the Antarctic South Pole. He was chairman of the National Science Foundation. And he called me, and every time he called me, he'd just say, "What are you doing?" In my office. And I said, "I'm just waiting for your call." And I said, "Do I need a camera?" And he said, "No." So I went over, and he said, "I understand I'm going to be in temperatures of 65 below zero, and I want to take pictures." He had a little Minox camera about the size of an old package of gum. He usually had it in his vest pocket. He traveled with it all the time. And he said, "I understand that at 65 below zero, film is kind of like glass." I said, "Yes, it is." I said, "What you need to do is just pull it away from your vest, shoot pictures. You've got maybe 5 minutes, put it back, keep it next to your body, and you'll be fine." And he came back. There were 50 exposures on a roll, and little bitty negatives. And he came back with 4 rolls. That'd be 200 prints. And I shipped them off to New York, had them processed, and they came back. I sent a student over with him, and he called me. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I was kind of waiting for your call." And he said, "I want you to see these." So I got over there about 3:30, and we sat and we looked at every picture. He told me everybody's name. I didn't know anybody. And it became about 5:30 in the afternoon, and I said, "Father, I usually call my wife when I'm going to be late. May I do that?" And he looked at his watch and says, "Oh, it's 5:30. So he said, "Do call her." I did. He left, came back with a package with a little red bow on it. He said, "Here, give this to Juanita." That was it. Nice guy. It was a beautiful sterling silver serving spoon with a Notre Dame emblem on it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so generous. All right, let's take a look at this next photo. I love this photo.
That was probably the most relaxed look I've ever seen on him. He called me one day and he said, I just wrote a book, God, Country, and Notre Dame. He said, "They tell me I need a book cover photograph." I said, "Fine." And we wandered around the campus. And we probably shot 3 or 4 locations, but that's the one he liked. And that is currently in the bookstore, God, Country, and Notre Dame.
Wow. And this next photo is Father Ted with another president.
That would be David Eisenhower, and that was in 1960. That was held outside. The first time I think that we did that outside. The weather was good. That helped. And Cardinal Montini was also in that group, who later became Pope Paul VI.
Wow. And Bruce, thank you for sharing all of these great photos with Father Ted. He lived quite the life, and thankfully you were there to capture some of those moments. We have one last question today. What was your relationship like with Father Ted?
Very friendly. Just not like an employer-employee relationship. He was a friend, and we talked. He'd ask me about the students, what they were thinking, and so forth. And we could say anything or talk about anything. So just a nice guy.
All right. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for joining us on Notre Dame Day and sharing Father Ted's memory.
My pleasure.
Thank you. All right, now it's time for a short commercial break, but don't go away. When we get back, Jack will be joined on the Notre Dame hotline with football royalty. Thank you so much.
An Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.
We are the University of Notre Dame.
Welcome back to Notre Dame Day and our tribute this hour to the legacy of Father Ted. I am Jack Nolan, and we are joined now by a former Notre Dame All-American, the captain of the 1966 National Championship football team, an 11-year NFL veteran who was a Pro Bowler at his linebacker position. He owns a Super Bowl ring and is enshrined in the College Football Hall of Fame. How is that for an introduction? Joining us now from Phoenix, Arizona on the Notre Dame Day hotline is none other than Jim Lynch. Jim, how are you?
Jack, I am doing absolutely great. Thank you very much. And the weather here is terrific. I don't know what it's like in South Bend.
It's actually terrific here as well as we come out of our very long winter. Now, I know you live in Kansas City where you starred for the Chiefs, so what are you doing in Phoenix?
Well, you know, Georgia and I, we wanted to get a house away in the warm weather climate. And when you're in Kansas City, you kind of go southwest. You don't go southeast. And Phoenix is just a one stop away. So that's where we started. We've had a place out here for about 15 years now.
Well, we have a photo of you and your beautiful wife, Georgia, on our screen right now, and it looks like life is really treating both of you well. All right,
well,
I want to take you back now to the spring of 1967. You're coming off a national championship, a team you captained. You received the Maxwell Award as the nation's top football player. You are the proverbial big man on campus, and then this happens. Word gets out that Notre Dame is considering making the cheerleaders co-ed for the first time in school history for the 1967 football season. You take the story from there.
Well, you got to go back into the time that it happened, and that was, like you said, in the spring of '67. We were seniors. We had pretty much wrapped up all the worries about graduating, and we knew we were going to be graduating. So what I'm getting at is probably a little bit of senioritis. And at the time, the Observer came out with an article that got everybody, it hit everybody the wrong way, and it said that there were going to be female cheerleaders next year. And we said, well, now, wait a minute, has anybody talked about this? Has anybody said anything about this? So in any event, because we didn't have anything better to do, we started getting a referendum up, and we had a vote on it, and it was voted down by the student body. So that's about all I can say about it. I think that, that one of the things that got attributed to the campaign we had was better dead than co-ed, and I'm supposed to be the author of that. I really wasn't, but, it is pretty catchy. It's still pretty catchy.
Well, it's become a Notre Dame legend, and you have just debunked it a bit, so we'll call it a Notre Dame myth. But let's go ahead now a number of years, and you have 3 children, all but 2 of them boys. So in other words, you had 2 girls. And where did those daughters happen to graduate from?
Georgia, my wife, says that is absolute proof that God is a woman. There's no question about it, because my 2 daughters both went to the University of Notre Dame. Both of them graduated with honors. They did very, very well academically, better than their old man did. And they both just are wonderful, wonderful women today. As a matter of fact, I just had a chance to be with them for about an hour today. So.
And I know that a few years ago, Notre Dame celebrated the 40th anniversary of coeducation at Notre Dame, and you were invited to be the keynote speaker, and you began that speech with what is also now a classic line in Notre Dame lore. Do you remember what you said?
I think I started out by saying, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned."
Yes.
I said, from a boneheaded thought process going way back, and I do remember starting out by saying that, and also saying, I love women, and my favorite color is pink, and I kind of ate a lot of crow there, and it deservedly so. I mean, if you start thinking about a 21-year-old kid who's got nothing better to do than bitch about some women coming on campus, I think that some crow needs to be eaten, and I've definitely done it over the years.
Well, you've always had unbelievable class, and this was an appropriate storyline in an hour honoring Father Ted, who broke the coeducational barrier here at Notre Dame. But I know this fall you get back a lot. We'll be talking football then. Thanks for the time, Jim.
Jack, thank you for being with me. And I would like to just make one comment, and that is, when I was on campus, it was such a fantastic time. And when you start thinking about Father Ted and Father Ned and Ara Parsegian, people like that are absolute giants then and giants now. So I was very, very fortunate not only to go to Notre Dame, but to go to Notre Dame when I did.
And Notre Dame was fortunate to have you, Jim. Thank you very, very much. And now we want to toss it on over to Emily, who has a couple of guests who are very familiar faces to folks here on campus. Emily?
That's right. Thank you, Jack. Now I am joined by Bill and Tim Sexton. Thank you so much for being here. A man who served as the longtime vice president of university relations, and his son, who's currently associate vice president of public affairs for the university. Bill and Tim, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Emily.
We're excited to have you, and I know Father Ted was very close to the entire Sexton family. So, Bill, Let's go back to the days at Notre Dame when you were a distinguished faculty member in the Mendoza College of Business and you received a phone call from Father Ted asking you and your wife to join him for dinner. Can you take the story from there for us?
Sure, he asked us to come to the Summit Club. It doesn't exist anymore, but it's 25 floors up, and we'd never been there. I mean, we were pretty humble at the time insofar as going out to dinner. And anyway, he sat down, had a Manhattan, which was his custom, and just charmed us to death. And then he said, I need you to do something. Jim Frick is retiring. Well, Jim Frick was a legend here at Notre Dame in fundraising. And I said, Father, I don't know anything about it. He says, you're going to be great. It's going to be perfect. And if you've ever had someone look in your eyes and you just knew that there was almost no one else on the planet except the two of you, that's what he did. And so if he'd have said, you know, I want you to exercise because it's a lot of hard work, maybe you should walk down the 25 steps, I would have done it.
So not only was he charming, it sounds like he was very persuasive as well.
Very, very persuasive, yes.
Wow. Well, Tim, I know you and your wife, Tanya, had a special relationship with Father Ted. Can you share a story with us about that?
Sure, Emily. Actually, this one goes up north to Land O'Lakes. It was the first time actually my wife had gone up fishing with us on our annual trip up there. And Father was so excited for Tanya to be experiencing the property and experiencing catching fish. Well, we went out a few times and came back with zeros. We didn't catch a single fish, and my wife was devastated. He said, keep trying, and we went out that night, and my wife had caught a small bass and was reeling in a small bass, and a muskie, a very large muskie, much, much bigger fish, hit that bass and kept it on the line. So she was fighting actually both of the fish for probably, it felt like 10 minutes, it was probably 2 or 3. But it was really exciting for her, and the whole time she was fighting this fish, she was saying, I can't wait to tell Father Hesburgh, I can't wait to tell Father Hesburgh. So immediately upon returning to the cabins, we went over to his and shared the story, and the two of them, they were just so excited. It was like he was there with her, experiencing this thrill that she had just had undertaken.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. And Bill, Tim mentioned that Notre Dame's Land O'Lakes property. I understand you and your family spent many summers there with Father Ted. And I believe we have a recent photo of you and your sons with Father Ted on one of those trips. Can you tell us a little bit about the Land O'Lakes property and what those family vacations were like with Father Ted?
Well, if you've never been there, it's a magnificent wilderness. There's not a postage stamp without a fir tree or a birch tree on it. There's approximately 20 lakes there, and there's faculty and students there every summer. But there are 2 cottages there, large ones, where we entertain people. And Father Ted, right after he appointed me to this position, he said, we ought to bring some people up there who like to fish and who might be able to help us with what we're trying to do here at Notre Dame. So I'll give you an example. Bill Hewlett-Packard. Well, Bill came up and we went fishing. He caught a muskie. Everybody could guaranteed a muskie. So anyway, we got to the end of the day and we're sitting around the fire in the summer house. And Bill Hewlett says, you know, Flora and I are really fun people. But I have the feeling that isn't the only reason we're here. And with that, he brought gave us a brand new mainframe for the entire campus. But he did catch a fish.
Wow. Okay, and speaking of fish, Tim, there's a legendary fishing story involving this fish mounted on a fireplace at Land O'Lakes and Father Ted. Can you share that with us?
This can only be true if it happened to Father Ted. Father Ted and Jerry Hank, a longtime friend of the University of Notre Dame, were fishing together out on one of the lakes that my dad had just referenced, and they were just getting ready to start their fishing expedition. Father Ted was lighting his cigar, getting things going, and his fishing pole was sitting off the side of the boat with a lure hanging from it. And a muskie that we've been talking about, muskie came up through the water, tried to hit it, missed it, splashed into the water, and holy cow, are we going to have a great night of fishing. The muskie came back through the water, missed, and landed in the boat. And they proceeded to subdue it and capture it, and it was about a 45-inch muskie, 17-pound fish that is now mounted on the wall there up at Land O'Lakes with the story. There was another gentleman in the boat with them. It's the 3 Musketeers that they refer to it, but it's a true story that happened only to Father Ted.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. Well, I know Father Ted meant a great deal to you and your family, and thanks for joining us in this tribute for such a great man.
Thank you, Emily.
And now I'm going to send it over to Jack, who has a special guest on our Notre Dame hotline. Jack?
That is correct, Emily. Thank you. We are joined now by an individual who was a member of the second class of undergraduate women to attend the University of Notre Dame. She earned her undergraduate degree from Notre Dame in 1977 and her law degree from the Notre Dame Law School in 1980. A 6-year career as a successful trial attorney led to a move to a circuit court judgeship and then to a justice position on the Illinois Appellate Court. She has received the Woman of Achievement Award and Edward F. Soren Award from her alma mater, and her oldest daughter has followed in her footsteps to Notre Dame. Joining us now on the Notre Dame Day hotline from Cleveland, Ohio, is the Honorable Sheila O'Brien. Sheila, welcome to Notre Dame Day.
Thank you for having me. How exciting.
Now, I know you're from the Chicago area, so what takes you to Cleveland this day?
My Notre Dame roommate, Karen Abraham Wanders, and her husband, Rich Wanders, both of the class of 77, live here in Cleveland. And Karen has some health concerns, so I'm out visiting and being with Karen for a while.
I know I speak for the entire Notre Dame family when I say we send our prayers out to Karen, but that's another thing that makes Notre Dame great. The relationships you make here, I know, last a lifetime. Now let's go back to your early years. When did Notre Dame first appear on your radar screen?
Oh, golly, probably when I was about 8 years old. Notre Dame highlights used to be on Sunday mornings for those of us over the age of 60. And I used to watch them with my dad, who was a Subway alum. And I said, I want to go to Notre Dame someday. And he said, well, you can't do that because you're a girl. So it was always on the radar for a nice Irish Catholic family to cheer for the Irish.
And Father Ted put an end to that obstacle for you, didn't he?
He did. You know, when Notre Dame went co-ed in 1972, or at least the first class of women got there, it really opened the doors for all of us to think that Notre Dame could be a possibility for us. So it was a very exciting time and a very interesting time for the university. And those of us who applied back then and got there had some very interesting experiences.
Now let's talk about those early days of co-education at Notre Dame. How did the guys treat you?
Well, I think the guys were like we were. That it was a new experience, and we were all a little confused as to how it was going to work out. So these were really great guys. They were wonderful. They're wonderful people, but it was a new experience for all of us. So there were times when we weren't all on our best behavior, and sometimes the guys were not as nice to us as they should have been. But in the end, it all became part of the history of Notre Dame and how it all worked out. It worked out well, as you can tell. Now Notre Dame is 50% women and 50% men, so it all worked out well in the end.
You know, I still occasionally read on the chat board some of the older grads who still are not happy that this is a co-ed institution, but everybody that I talk about around here really believes that the addition of women to Notre Dame has really helped this campus grow in so many areas that it needed to grow in.
Well, you know, it's fun. Like, I think you had Jim Lynch on earlier, right?
Yes,
You know,
yes.
Jim Lynch, what a great guy. Jim Lynch, what a fabulous Notre Dame person. And yet Jim wasn't for it at the beginning. The world has changed, and Notre Dame went co-ed at the same time that Princeton went co-ed, Yale, all these schools did. It was a change in society. It took a little time, but people eventually saw that it was a good way to go. And God loved Father Ted and Father Blance and Father Joyce and the First Laid Board to say, let's do this. Let's try it out.
Now, I know your oldest child, Mary, is a sophomore here at Notre Dame. What was that like for you, dropping your daughter off at Notre Dame for the first time?
Golly, it was almost 40 years to the day that I arrived at Notre Dame, so it was kind of an out-of-body experience. But Mary's having a great time at Notre Dame and playing on the Notre Dame Ultimate Frisbee team, which, as you know by looking at the leaderboards, is number 2 right now in donations, right behind the Glee Club. And they're going to the Nationals in Milwaukee over Memorial Day. So she's enjoying Notre Dame as much as I did and my roommates did. It's fun to watch the Ultimate Frisbee team. Did I say that enough, Mary, the Ultimate Frisbee team?
I'm glad that you clarified that, because I was wondering what the heck the Ultimate Frisbee team was going to do with, the last I looked, $43,000. I thought they were going to have golden Frisbees. But
No, really, let me tell you, they are terrific. And boy, I watched them this weekend. They really carry the banner of Notre Dame in a tremendous way. The women beat Michigan. Let's hear it for those Notre Dame women who beat Michigan at Ultimate Frisbee in Rockford, and the Notre Dame women are going to go to the Nationals in Ultimate Frisbee, so it's very cool. I've come alive to Ultimate Frisbee. So it's very cool to watch Notre Dame expand in all these different ways. MK is on the team and enjoying it, and they are great, great people. I urge all the people listening right now to watch this team, and you'll be very proud of the Irish as they head to the Nationals in Milwaukee over Memorial Day.
Sheila, thank you so much, and I'm glad we gave you an opportunity to promote Ultimate Frisbee into one of the nation's leading sports.
You're so kind. Also, Mary lives in Walsh Hall. Let's have a shout-out for Walsh Hall and their rector, Liz. And, boy, I wish maybe Mary would think about law school. What a great law school Notre Dame has, as I know. Nell Newton and all of her fabulous people, and Jake, who's the director of admissions. So thanks to all of you at Notre Dame who are doing Notre Dame Day. It's really fun. Can you tell they all told me that I should give them a shout-out?
And you follow instructions well. Sheila, thank you very much. We have to take a quick break, and when we come back, Digger will rejoin us with a special guest.
Cool.
Sheila, thank you so much.
The world needs a university that educates men and women who accept their responsibility to serve others. We will strive to build a community where education, inquiry, and faith combine to respond to the demands of justice. This is our goal. Let no one ever say that we dreamed too small.
An Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.
We are the University of Notre Dame.
3. Oh. Joining me now is a personal friend, but more importantly, a great friend of Father Hesburgh, who back in the early 70s became Father Hesburgh's personal driver, plus director of transportation, a few other things, Marty Ogren. How did you get that job with Father Hesburgh to become his go-to guy, including, and we'll mention it later, taking him to his farewell cemetery?
Yeah. Well, Digger, I started working at the Notre Dame Garage in August of 1975. And almost on a daily basis, I got to know Father's driver, Carl Paris. Father's car was parked in the garage, and Carl and I would interact, became friends. About a year later, I got a call on a Friday afternoon, and Carl indicated he wasn't feeling very well and asked if I would drive Father to O'Hare. I said, sure, I'd be happy to do it. I hung up the phone, and I said, uh-oh, what have I done? First off, growing up in South Bend, Indiana, I was aware of Father Hesburgh and his reputation, had never met Father Hesburgh, so I'm intimidated. The second problem is I've never been to O'Hare Airport. So I go in and I tell my boss, I said, I think I've made a mistake. And he says, let's go. And he was kind enough. We hopped in his car on Friday afternoon, and we drove to O'Hare. The next day, I'm parked behind Corby Hall, and Father comes out. He asked me a ton of questions, and by the time we got to LaPorte, I was at ease with Father Ted Hesburgh.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, over the years, obviously, he's the godfather of the Civil Rights Act, and President Eisenhower back in '57 asked him to do it. And then, of course, there was one point, as you know and I know, Helen, who was the one running the office,
yes.
Father Hesburgh didn't have a commencement for graduation. And what did Helen do to him?
So Father Ted tells the story, and I can't tell you what year it was, but for whatever reason, the scheduled commencement speaker had to back out. So Father Ted says, boy, I don't know what we're going to do. And Helen said, well, why not invite the president, President Eisenhower? And Father indicated, he said, there's no way we can get him on short notice, but Helen, if you write the letter, I'll sign it. Well, the rest is history. President Eisenhower was commencement speaker that year, so.
So Helen was the go-to person behind the scenes.
Helen got it done, absolutely.
What do you think, as you look back over his years at the age of 97, his greatest achievement was here at Notre Dame?
Well, I can tell you what he was proudest of, and that was admitting women, making Notre Dame co-ed. There's no doubt in my mind that was what he was proudest of.
And obviously now with a class of 2,000 freshmen, 1,000 are women and 1,000 are men, so it's 50-50.
Absolutely.
Outside of Notre Dame, Marty, he was more than just a university president. We talked about the Civil Rights Act, obviously, and what went on, and that was 50 years this past 2014, so he was able to live to see that happen.
Yeah.
But he was also really interested in immigration.
Sure was.
And what was he trying to achieve in that direction?
Well, he co-chaired several committees looking into immigration and what was the answer, you know, what was the right thing to do and how could you pull it off? And legislation was passed. Obviously, it's a hot topic again today, but that's one of the things that he worked the hardest on.
And then he got involved with the Knight Commission, which was concerning about graduation rates with student athletes. And he was the leader of that, and they would meet in Washington, D.C. and go after the direction of bringing back credibility, not just Title VII, Title IX, but academic credibility for students to become student athletes and graduate with a degree to mean something.
That's exactly right. He co-chaired the Knight Commission, and they worked very hard and came out with a huge report on how to reform college athletics.
It was a sad, sad day, February 26th, Thursday, which is hard to believe it's over 8 weeks ago. You were there that Thursday, 4 hours before he passed. And what's your reflections on that moment?
Because of my relationship with Father, it was very tough to see him in that condition. But at the same time, what a great life. It was time to go. He wanted to go, missed Father Joyce terribly. And I can only imagine at the homecoming he got from Mary when he walked through those gates. I mean, that's so it was time.
Okay, but you had one more ride with Father Hesburgh. You drove from the Basilica, the hearse, with the casket in the back. When you were around that curve to go down and go up to get to the cemetery, what reaction did you get when you saw the student body lined on both sides of the road, taking Father Ted to his grave?
Well, Digger, I was at the funeral, and that was tough emotionally, just dealing with the actual funeral, the beautiful mass. So I walked outside to prepare to get in the hearse, and I knew there'd be people outside the Basilica, and there were tons of people. And I knew I had to keep myself composed to be able to drive the hearse. So I got in the car and I said, Father, hold on, one more trip. And everything was fine. And when we got in front of Corby, I'm fine. But when we made that turn to go downhill and I saw those thousands of students, I got a lump in my throat, and I had to look down at Father O'Hara's feet because I couldn't look at the students. I had the window down because the seminarians who served as pallbearers were walking next to the hearse, so I wanted to be able to talk to them. Am I going too fast, going too slow? So with the window down, the silence, the respect, you could hear a pin drop. And when I would drive by the students' sign of the cross, about the last 100 yards in front of the cemetery, ROTC students.
That was
and
a
boy,
tearjerker.
when they came to attention, it's good the cemetery wasn't far away. So what a moment.
Well, Marty, I've known you for a very, very long time. And very fortunately, I just spent time with Melanie in talking about Father Hesburgh in the office. And I would say the two closest people to Father Hesburgh outside of his friends, real friends, was Melanie Chapeau and Marty Ogren. And Marty, I really appreciate your life and what you did for that man, because he had nothing but love, respect, and obviously we're all knowing where he is today. Peace in heaven with the Blessed Mother. So Emily, it's back to you.
All right, thank you, Digger. Now we're going to end this hour's tribute to Father Ted Hesburgh with a video that was produced nearly 8 years ago. We felt this was the most appropriate way to end this Notre Dame Day celebration of the legacy of Father Ted, since the voice you will hear narrating this video is none other than the late Chairman Emeritus of the University of Notre Dame's Board of Trustees, Don Keogh. Don's death came just 2 days before that of his good friend, Father Ted, this past February. I'm sure the two are enjoying each other's company these days in heaven.
Listen. There is purpose in the silence. A lifetime lived as teacher, counselor, leader, and friend. He embodies much to many, but first and foremost, he is priest.
Which will be given up.
A mediator, a bridge between the Creator and humankind. With God's grace and the quiet hand of the Holy Spirit, Father Theodore Martin Hesburgh embarked on an unforgettable journey. He has sought to reconcile the great chasm between black and white, rich and poor, learned and ignorant.
By the way, those footprints are not just in Bill's imagination.
He has taught by example that peace, love, and understanding develop from compassion for all humanity. Rooted in faith, he has envisioned a world where education is the hope that lifts the spirit of the future. His courage and imagination are fueled by never-ending optimism. With God, all things are possible. He listened, heard, and was trusted. He took chances, gave reasoned arguments, and worked for positive and lasting change. From celebrating daily Mass to counseling popes and presidents, he stood up to disruptive protesters, and he held hands so peace may reign. He has fought for the basic human rights of all God's children and garnered respect for his commitment and conviction. Father Theodore Hesburgh is both priest and educator. His vision of a great Catholic university has borne fruit in his beloved Notre Dame du Lac. He inspires us all by a life in which he dared to imagine a world fashioned in God's image, where the heart of each individual continues to search for insight and wisdom through the gifts of education and faith. In the joyous moments of play or the silent minutes of prayer, the peacefulness here is tangible. A future born of that spirit is limitless.